Hey there, this is Manga Studio Sensei, and I'm going to go over something really kind of basic, but extremely important for you as a growth as an artist, especially when you're dealing with the earliest stages of getting used to this program. Now, you've probably seen people sketch with the G pen or stuff like that, or any other pen for that matter, and sometimes they do well, but whenever you do it, it kind of looks like this. You got these lines that have varying weights, and they just don't seem right. And none of them do. And you have all these little edges here and there, and it's just like, ugh, it's a mess. So, what do you do about it? One of the basic ways that I learned, and I got this inspiration from the Sony Vaio 13 new tablet that was featured with Clip Studio Paint, was that you actually use a brush that doesn't have any pressure sensitivity. Now, I first off, I tried off this just turning off on the G Pen and gave it a try, and it's like, it's not even, it's even worse. It looks like I'm drawing with a broken tablet or something that lost its pressure sensitivity. It's like MS Paint. And so that doesn't work either. So what do you do about it? Uh, what you do is actually, you turn on brush density, which you could find over in brush tip under brush density right here, and I have that set right there for later use. But essentially, you give it a curve, or just not a curve, you just give it a straight line, and it gives you a slightly tapered, not tapered line, the opacity itself tapers, or the density of the brush, which gives it this flat look, because if you draw a straight line, under normal circumstances without this on, you get that rounded edge, if you noticed. But in this, it's mitigated a little bit because it kind of fades away. And that's important because those rounded lines rarely come about in almost any drawing. Most people dislike them. So it's nice to have these. Now, depending on how your tablet works or how sensitive you made it in the driver settings, sometimes you want to have it more firm, so that you need to put a little more oomph before you draw a line, because otherwise it comes out like kind of lighter. Or you want to go for something darker or softer, and just go for that. Now, it's important to note that many of these brushes have brush stroke set to 2, and you want to set that to 1, because when you set it to 2, oftentimes what happens is that you overshoot what you're drawing, because what it does is brush stroke will make a stroke last a little bit long after it you release. So I think I release like at around this point, but you notice it keeps drawing to that point, and that's just really the function of brush stroke. It makes it easier to do tapered lines because you don't have to commit to the entire thing, and you can get a soft transition to the end. But when you're sketching, you don't want that, because you kind of want exactly what you want to show up on the screen, so keep that in mind. And so I'm going to draw something a little bit less ugly, and just work with this. And so if the tool doesn't turn out right at the first try, get rid of the drawing that you're working on, and then try it at a different size. I'm at 7 pixels on a pretty big canvas. I think it's an A4 canvas set with 350 dpi, so it's pretty sizable. But as you can see, it looks a lot better. I mean, it's not as thick and not thin, and it has a lot more character in general, because it just seems right. But I'm also not dealing with the issues of having to really like wrangle with the pressure sensitivity, because that's always a pain. When it comes down to it, dealing with pressure sensitivity and trying to get your idea out at the same time is often a process that doesn't produce very many happy endings. Oops. Always want to fill in your lines. Otherwise that happens. And you'll notice that these lines are a lot easier to fill in as well, as compared to when you do it with a pen that's like this. You try to do the same thing. So let me make another eye with this tool. Yeah, and you get those kind of like those crazy little jaggies out there. overall it's not very desirable. But in any case, the 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 primary idea behind this is if you cut out that variable in your sketching process and just think about it afterwards, it might seem like it's a waste of time, but the fact is, especially when you're drawing anime style stuff, you're not going to get your lines perfect on a first try in almost every situation. It's just not going to happen. Sometimes, especially if you make a line weight and then you can't figure out how to make that line weight happen again, you're kind of stuck. And this is just honestly a better way. That, and it actually kind of has a little bit of a charming appeal because it does look cleaner. It's not as all over the place. And you have a lot more control over it. Now, if you need a little bit more control, make sure you turn on stabilization to make it easier for you to get lines to go in the right direction. Like, this is good for hair strokes, obviously, because you want to have strong, long, uniform strokes, like so. And, you know, in terms of just erasing, you'll get a feel for just normal erasing, because sometimes you'll have, like, you'll just erase and it'll look like that, and you'll be like, well, how do I make that easier? Well, outside of working on a vector layer, which I will demonstrate, I actually demonstrated in my first video, but I can demonstrate again later, is that you just got to get better at doing it, and it'll come naturally. You'll get to that point where it's not even, you won't even think about it. Just be like, oh, well, I just cleaned up that line. It's okay. So you have these lines cleaned up, and I notice I zoom out a lot. Like that's kind of the general idea. You don't necessarily have to work at 100%, especially if your canvas is a lot bigger than what your screen size is. So let's see. And that's really basically it. It's not terribly complex, but it's also not something I would just throw away as useless information. The more you practice with this brush, the better you'll actually get with all the other brushes, surprisingly enough, because you'll know how to control your brush, and like you always know where to go to start from ground zero, from sort of square one, as opposed to struggling with the brush and not really getting to really know how it works. So just, and I'll get more examples on my site with get more examples of finished works or semi-finished works to where they're ready for inking, or at least done to a better point. But generally speaking, this will help you avoid that kind of noobish look, which is the goal of this video. Is to, if you can get past that whole I have these really skinny lines and I don't know what to do with them phase, then you will be golden in the later stages of drawing anything in Manga Studio. So I hope you like this video, and I hope it's not too jumbled around. I apologize. I don't want to edit them as much anymore because I just want to kind of show myself in the wild, so to speak. So, but if you have any questions or comments, please leave them, and subscribe, and stay tuned for more.